Good evening, Muttonistas. I'm on the banks of the River Shannon in Ireland. I've just come from Galway, had a rather heavy session filming Guinness for you all there, but Limerick, the third largest city in the Republic of Ireland, is also an important venue for those who want to drink Guinness. So join me on what should be a less Guinness-fueled short tour of the pubs and Guinness in Limerick. As I said in the introduction, I've just come from Galway, and many of you will have seen my video, which was quite a long one from there. I really did cover a hell of a lot of pubs. My head is much the worse for it, a few dry days coming after today and tomorrow, so I'll just try and bring you a couple of pubs tonight and 3 or 4 tomorrow, because there's a limit to how much I can take. Anyway, interestingly, behind me, a sculpture of Terry Wogan. People from Britain and Ireland will know him, and it's a voice I certainly grew up with. If you didn't know who he was a TV and radio presenter, very soft Irish brogue, very, very popular. Anyway, Muttonistas, enough faffing about here, because we have got some pubs to go to and some Guinness to review. Okay, Muttonistas, pub number 1, Tom Collins, recommended by a lot of you, and I've seen other reviewers review this pub, so it should be quite good. It's actually very, very close to my hotel, and the other pubs, or most of the other pubs that I want to review, are actually in this area as well. I mean, wow, that makes for a good pub crawl, even though this isn't really a tourist destination. Right, Muttonistas, first pint of the tour. Good looking pint, and the price was actually pretty reasonable, €5.80. This bar is very nicely appointed, and it's actually a lot darker than you'd think. I've just found somewhere to capture most of the light. There are some parts of this pub where I probably couldn't film because it'd be too dark. Anyway, interestingly, the barman, who waited patiently for the first pour to settle, he then pulled the tap in the normal way, backwards, and then pulled it forwards right at the end. Now often you see the top up done with the tap facing forwards at the end, and he only changed the position of the tap right at the end. I've seen a lot of barmen do this here, but a lot of barmen in Britain just push it forward for the second pour. So here we go. Yeah. That is a good pint. That is a mighty fine pint. Ooh, I have to say, with the exception of Hughes's, probably better than anything I was having in Galway. Maybe one of the other pubs matched this. Very, very slight twang of bitterness, but not too much. And very rich and creamy. I mean, look at that. That's a good start, isn't it? Look at that lacquering. Anyway, I'll be back with you further down the pint to see if that stays true to the bottom of the glass. Now, before I get on to telling you how the pint has been further down the glass, a lot of you often like to know how often I've been to these places, and this is my 3rd visit to Limerick. The previous one was 15 years ago, and the one before that was way back in 1982, when it was a very, very different place. Anyway, this has drunk well and is actually improved, in my opinion, as I've gone down the pint. So yeah, it's a creamer. But as always, Muttonistas, I can't hang about. I'd love to spend all evening in the same pub, but it wouldn't be much of a review if I did. Well, what a start that was, a real creamer. I mean, the lacquering down the side of the glass was just something else. Anyway, on to pub 2, Myles Breens. Another highly recommended pub, and a couple of local muttonistas reckon it's the best. Obviously, I can't tell until I've been to all the big hitters, but let's hope this is going to be another creamer. And it is actually quite a quiet night, so obviously the Guinness isn't flowing as much as it would have been over the weekend. It is a bank holiday today with a working day tomorrow, so I think people have already done their money or done their brains or whatever over the last few days. Anyway, it should be a good test as to how good the pint is. Right, muttonistas, on to Myles Breens. Some local muttonistas in the background. They've been raving about the pint here, so I'm expecting good things. Nay, I'm expecting a bit of a creamer. Oh yeah, and a creamer is what I've got. This surpasses Collins. Wow, and that was a good pint, but this, oh my goodness, I could drink a dozen of these. And last night in Galway, I had possibly more than the recommended health allowance for alcohol, actually a whole week's worth. But if the Guinness is this good, oh God, I've got to prevent myself from overdoing it tonight. No metallic taste, no sourness, no bitterness, a real creamy pint of Guinness. And I am looking forward to reviewing also the Beamish here, so you're going to get a bonus, muttonistas. Now, a lot of Dubliners talk about Limerick being called Stab City. Now, the locals here have told me that that was something from the past, from 20 years ago, and that the problem's probably worse in Dublin. I have to say, I felt pretty safe walking around the city centre. Sure, a few homeless people asking for change in an area that feels reasonably affluent, but other than that, there doesn't seem to be a problem. Sure, every city's got people who are hooked on drugs and things, but it didn't seem too bad here. And of course, Muttonista's class to the bottom of the glass. Great lacquering on the side of the glass. Anyway, we're going to roll the video on to tomorrow. I'll bring you a bit of food as well, but it's more than possible, given this pint is so good, that I might just have one or two more off camera. See you tomorrow. Okay, muttonistas, I'm still in Myles Breens, so I told not just a white lie, but an absolute whopper that would be my last pint here. But when I'd heard that the Beamish is decent here, I thought, well, outside of County Cork, not something that's drunk so often, but I've got to try it, because it is something that you see at a lot of Irish pubs. The rest of the lads here, they're sticking to the Guinness. I'm the only one on the Beamish. Am I going to get a dud or a creamy beamy here? Oh wow, look at that lacquering there. What a pub this is. I mean, the Guinness is absolutely exquisite, but this is as well. Okay, some of you won't like the smoky taste that you get with a Beamish. I love it, and they serve it well. How can it be this good when I'm the only punter in the pub on it? So I'm going to sign off tonight, and I mean it this time, on this deliciously creamy beamy. And I'll see you tomorrow, and the local muttonistas have recommended a place that was well off my radar, and I'm looking forward to bringing it you. Okay, muttonistas, on to day 2, and what an exciting trip it's been so far. Myles Breens, well, I have to say, what absolute creamers they were. Lovely view in the background of an old bridge and Limerick Castle. Hopefully on day 3, I may well get to sit at a pub which has quite a good view of that. Anyway, I'm going to have a special visitor joining me on day 3, which is why we've extended the vlog. Another big pork pie about it being a short one, turned into a 3-day one, but I'm going to take it easy tonight just so that I'm match fit. Anyway, the muttonistas last night at Myles Breens and the barman all said I have to go to Timmy Martins. It's pretty close to here, so to Timmy Martins we shall go. Right, Muttonistas, Timmy Martins. I've been led to believe it's an old man's pub, although that always doesn't turn out to be the case. And with such great recommendations from people drinking in what was a great pub, how can I go wrong? And it's quite windy today. Have I chosen an unlucky day, or is it often like this? I've got a wind muff on my microphone. I hope the sound is okay for you viewers. It's the best I can do. And I'd better get in there before my hat blows off. Oh, and just before I do come in, a lot of you ask me, how do I avoid hangovers? How can I put so much away in film? Well, that's the answer, folks. I drink a lot of this between pubs because I don't want to be drunk and slurring when I'm reviewing. I know it's not a normal night out drinking a ton of water, but it's something I have to do. Well, I wouldn't call this an old man's bar at all. I mean, they've got TV screens for sport, a pretty mixed clientele, but how good is this? The head looks very, very promising. Yeah, another creamer, folks, another absolute creamer. The folks at Breens, they weren't wrong. And yes, in terms of decor, I do like pubs with wooden panelling like this. It's so wholesome, homely, whatever you want to call it. I suppose my local in South Manchester is quite modern, so that works as well, but this does it more for me. And of course, a lot of you will ask me about the cost of a pint, and it's not been far off €6 everywhere. Some places a bit cheaper, some places a bit more expensive, but not by much. There are apparently some places where you can still get a pint for £5. I wouldn't know where they were. Given I'm in city centres, well, I don't know. I don't think I'll be able to find it that cheaply. And the other thing I have to say is, given that Ireland is an expensive country to visit in terms of the hotels and the food and restaurants and things, beer is actually quite reasonably priced. In fact, most of the time the Guinness I'm drinking here, not only of course being of a better standard, is cheaper than that you get in the UK. Okay, pretty solid pint that was, really nice one, although not as good as Breen's, and possibly not as good as they'd led me to suggest it would be, but it's still a mighty fine pint. And I must say, it's a little bit warmer than some of the pints I've been having over here, probably served at the traditional temperature. Anyway, I'm going to finish this and then off to one of the 6 pubs owned by the same family called Flannery's. Right, Muttonistas, pub 2 of day 2, Flannery's. I believe of the 6 pubs owned by the Flannery's family, this one is called Patsy Flannery's. I'm not sure the names of the other pubs in terms of them being anything other than Flannery's, although I did see one with a big rugby ball outside, which if I get time I'll try and review, but it's likely I will run out of time. But the Muttonistas told me this is a place worth visiting, so let's give it a go. Right, Muttonistas, the barman kindly let me take a seat, brought it over, brought the card machine over even. Very nice service. Fairly quiet at the moment, although, as I've mentioned earlier, it was a bank holiday weekend earlier, and it is pretty early in the evening. A few punters on it, but not that many on the Guinness. But it's got a good reputation, this, and yet again, it's a well-appointed pub. I mean, look at this. I mean, what a lovely interior that is. Not far from the other places I've been visiting in the centre, which makes it a great location for a pub crawl. But, as always, Muttonistas, the most important thing is the flavour of the Guinness. That is great. Wow, that is fantastic. Number 2 after Breens, this is. It just shows you that however they're rated on Google and other vlogs, it's what you get on the day that matters. Anyway, as we get to the end of the pint, it's drunk well all the way through, and it's not, again, as cold as some of the others I've had here. And I have to say, I think this city is a great place to come for a pub crawl. Might be a bit lacking in terms of, shall we say, tourist attractions, and probably not enough hotel space if everybody wanted to do it. But whilst it's not a hidden gem, we all know Limerick because of the famous poems called Limerick, it's somewhere that's off the radar, well off the radar. I'd advise you come here. So close for every pub, 200, 300 metres maximum from pub to pub. Wonderful. And there's the tiniest hint of bitterness here, nothing more than that. Again, Breens is the top so far, but this is now number 2. Onwards and upwards, and as they say in the Monty Python films, time for something completely different. Okay, Muttonistas, something a bit different. Crew. Independent brewery, brew pub, whatever you want to call it. And in Ireland, Guinness really does dominate the market massively, massively. Hard to understate it. Even sometimes Beamish and Murphy's don't get that much of a look in, but I believe they have a couple of independent stouts here. One of their own, which is a little bit sweet, and one that is a dry stout from County Cork, which I'm going to go for. They also have pale ales here, and some friendly folks in the background there. They also have pale ales here, and as much as I like them, I haven't got time to fit everything in. So I'm sorry if there are lovers of independent ales in Ireland who think I'm missing out on something. I'll try and cover this on a future occasion. Right, Muttonistas, settled down in the Crew Brewing Company bar in Limerick. Now, they did have their own creation, a vanilla milk stout, but I read the tasting notes, too sweet for me. But also, from another brewery, the White Deer Brewery, is the Stag Stout, a nitro stout, supposedly a dry Irish-style stout. So let's give that a go. Bit disconcerted by all the bubbles on the top of the head. Doesn't always mean it's a bad pint, but sometimes it is a prelude to one. Well, I don't know what to make of that. A bit too plain for me, to be honest. There's no bitterness whatsoever. I was led to believe that the malts would give you a bit of bitterness, but they absolutely haven't. And I have to say, it's gluten-free, so people who can't tolerate gluten, this is a good bet. But for me, it's just not flavoursome enough. And yes, it is a dry stout. Hints of vanilla and lactose, though, which surprised me. Doesn't make it particularly sweet, but not as dry as some. So it's not a bad pint or anything like that. It's just not doing enough for me. Not enough flavour. I'd say if you have friends who are unsure about stout, this actually is quite a good introduction to it, because they won't get the overload of the chocolate and coffee notes you get in some stouts, or some of the bitterness. But for me, I'll be heading back to the Guinness, the Murphy's or the Beamish. The pub itself, very modern, trendy, attracts a younger crowd, and I heard quite a few different languages being spoken here. And I guess at some stage I'd like to come back and try the pale ales. Anyway, end of day 2 for me, and tomorrow should be another corker of a day, as I said, with a special guest. I'll see you tomorrow, Muttonistas. Okay, Muttonistas, day 3, the last day in Limerick and the last day of the Mutton Tour. And this was not going to be my first stop. However, the Treaty City Brewery reached out to me and said I need to try their independent stout. I'm big, as you know, on such independent stouts and independent ales of all sorts, although I have to say the Stout at the Crew Brewery, whilst I drink that in a heartbeat in the UK, I thought it was a little bit less flavoursome than the Guinness I've been having here. Let's hope that that's the opposite here with the Sarsfield Stout. Okay, Muttonistas, that pint does look good. I think I'm going to be onto a winner here. But before I take the first sip, I'm going to just show you around the interior a little bit. They do have their brewing facilities next door, but I'm in a bit of a rush. Okay, cheers Muttonistas, let's give it a whirl. I've got high hopes for this. That is a creamer, Muttonistas. This is an independent stout worth trying. I have to say, I thought it would be good when I first looked at it. It's smooth, creamy, no particular hints of bitterness, and the correct, very, very restrained coffee and chocolate notes you'd want in a dry Irish stout. Coming to the end of the pint, yes, and the cream has stuck to the glass throughout the pint. I wish I could see this in the UK, but I think they're trying to concentrate on their local market, but you never know, you might see it knocking about. Anyway, onwards and upwards, running late for my meeting with my special guest, so I'd better neck this. So there we are, Muttonistas, the Treaty City Brewery. Great to try an independent. And just to add to the notes and flavours, there was possibly a little more coffee than I suggested and a slight amount of bitterness. But I loved it. It's a stout drinker's stout, and I'd say actually, if you like Beamish, you'll probably like that a lot as well. Anyway, next pub, JJ Bowles, where I'm meeting my special guest. The lad needs no introduction, and I think it's his favourite pub here. And wow, Muttonistas, what a view this is. What a lovely beer garden or smoking area at the back of the pub with an unrivalled view of that bridge and the castle and the river. If the pint's as good as this, I could see myself staying here for more than a couple.
First pint of Guinness in Limerick. You know that, I know.
Well, that's the way Daragh rated it, so I'm hoping that proves to be the case. Okay, Muttonistas, a warm welcome from the landlord who proclaims his pint to be the best in Limerick, but I'll have to be the judge of that. And also, will my special guest, who needs no introduction, the Guinness Guru himself, Daragh Curran.
Hello, lads.
So I'm going to start off by giving my own views on this, and when he gets his pint, I'm going to hear the real deal from the man himself. Anyway, great pint so far in Limerick. Myles Breens, currently the best I've had. Supposedly this is better, but let's see. That is excellent, that is excellent. Although, I have to say, it's about on a par with Myles Breens. The landlord will probably flay me for that, but I have to give an honest opinion.
You give your honest opinion. Don't worry about what landlords are saying.
And for the Guinness police, yes, I've overshot the G, but we can't get it right all of the time, can we? Right, Muttonistas, nearly finished the first pint here at JJ Bowles, and what a view again of the bridge and the castle. But it's not just my opinion that counts, we have to hear what the great man has to say. And in fairness to this pint, it's probably the first or second they've poured off today, so if it's equal with the pint that we had at Myles Breens the other day, then it's possible, when it's flowing, racing into form, being drunk into form, that it's a better pint. I don't know. Anyway, I will have a second for my Instagram feed just to make sure and quality control the pint.
Very tough life.
And yeah, it's drinking well to the bottom of the glass. Not much lacquering. I know Daragh says shtick. It's not my phrase really, but it's still a tasty pint. Anyway, onwards and upwards to hear the man himself review the pint. Right, Muttonistas, a real treat for you. Daragh Curran, the Guinness Guru himself, is going to give his assessment on the pint. Might be different from mine, but this man knows what he's doing, so over to you, Daragh.
Sláinte. Thank you, Jason. I wasn't really trying to split the G, and yeah, definitely failed on it. So, JJ Bowles here on the beautiful river in Limerick. I came here, I'm a little bit rusty from the Guinness reviews, I'm still doing them, but not as much. But I came to Limerick, I think it was around just before New Year's 2022, expecting the whole city to be dead. It was absolutely packed, every pub. It was like the 28th of December, every pub was packed. Pints of Guinness were flowing. I went to a few pubs in the city centre, I'm sure as Mr. Mutton has gone to as well, and then I came here last and I honestly think I sat in this exact seat looking over the river, and I had a beautiful pint of Guinness here in JJ Bowles, and I believe I gave it, was it an 8.7 or an 8.8 out of 10? It was my highest score in Limerick. One disclaimer I would say is we're here very early. These are kind of the first couple of pints that have been poured today, so I would maybe, Mr. Prime Mutton himself, as we know, doesn't give the exact score, so I'm not really under pressure to give an exact score, but I would give a little bit of leniency in terms of the pints haven't been flowing all day. Not to say it's still not an absolutely incredibly creamy pint. Is it as good as I remember? I'm not too sure. It was a couple of years ago. But overall, I think for the first pints served, it's hard to not let the beautiful scenery and background come into your assessment of a pint. And it's a beautiful day, a beautiful river, in a beautiful city, with a pretty beautiful pint.
Right, Muttonistas, I do hope you've enjoyed this tour of the west of Ireland, Galway and now Limerick. I certainly have, and I'd hardly visited Limerick prior to this visit, and wow, was I amazed by what a great pub crawl you can have here. Some of those pubs in the centre, they're literally next door to each other, or if at most, 200 metres away. Anyway, I'm going to have to love you and leave you as always. Please remember, keep liking, keep sharing, keep subscribing, tell all your friends about me, and it's goodbye from me, and goodbye from Daragh.
Goodbye.
And most of all, Muttonistas, never forget, you can't beat a bit of mutton.